Niacin occupies a strange position in modern biomedical thought, a molecule that once stood at the vanguard of cardiovascular medicine and nutritional science, now mostly sidelined, often dismissed as old-fashioned, irritating, or even obsolete. This fall from grace is not due to scientific irrelevance. Niacin remains biochemically indispensable and therapeutically potent. Rather, its reputation has been eroded over time by a convergence of factors: the visibility of its side effects, its lack of patentability, a wave of dismissive narratives from newer NAD, focused marketing, and an unfortunate perception that equates old with inferior. Understanding how this reputation problem evolved requires looking at niacin not only through the lens of pharmacology, but also through cultural, commercial, and regulatory dynamics that have shaped its image far more than its chemistry ever did. Historically, niacin was a miracle molecule. Identified in the early 20th century as the cure for pellagra, a devastating deficiency disease marked by dermatitis, diarrhea, and dementia, it was among the first vitamins recognized as essential to human health. Later, in the mid-20th century, it achieved a second wave of medical significance as the first lipid-modifying agent shown to reduce cholesterol and, more importantly, cardiovascular events. Before statins, fibrates, or PCSK9 inhibitors, there was niacin. It reduced LDL cholesterol, raised HDL cholesterol, and lowered triglycerides. In high doses, it reduced non-fatal myocardial infarction and even total mortality, as demonstrated in large, landmark studies like the Coronary Drug Project. No one questioned its power. The issue was compliance. Then came the flush. The niacin flush, a harmless, transient, prostaglandin-mediated skin flushing, became one of the most visible and misunderstood side effects in modern pharmacology. Though not dangerous, it is uncomfortable and disfiguring enough that it deterred widespread use. What's remarkable is how completely this benign but inconvenient effect came to define the public and professional perception of niacin. It wasn't just a side effect, it became a caricature. Niacin was no longer the vitamin that saved lives or the molecule that rewired metabolism. It was the red-faced, itchy, old-school pill that no one wanted to prescribe or take. The timing of this reputational collapse coincided with the rise of the statins, powerful, well-tolerated, and eventually heavily marketed lipid-lowering agents that came with institutional backing and blockbuster sales. Niacin, being unpatentable and largely generic, lacked a corporate sponsor to defend or reinvent it. Over time, as marketing dollars shifted and research incentives moved toward novel compounds, niacin became a victim of neglect. Trials like AMHI and HBS2, Thrive, which tested niacin on top of statins and found minimal additive benefit, were widely interpreted, often simplistically, as evidence that niacin was obsolete. Yet these interpretations ignored key context. The background statin therapy had already normalized lipids to such a degree that niacin's margin for additional benefit was small, and the specific formulations used, often combined with flush-suppressing agents like laropiprant, introduced confounding variables. But nuance rarely survives in public memory. Niacin's usefulness wasn't disproven, it was reframed as unnecessary. Meanwhile, the supplement industry found a new narrative: designer NAD? Precursors like nicotinamide riboside (NR) and NMN, sleek molecules with futuristic branding, a flush-free experience, and the allure of novelty. These compounds, often sold at a premium, were promoted as smarter, cleaner ways to boost cellular energy, sirtuin activation, and mitochondrial health. Implicit in this marketing was the idea that niacin was yesterday's solution, good for preventing deficiency, but too crude for precision wellness. Scientific discussions subtly shifted from efficacy to tolerability and from systemic outcomes to molecular glamour. Niacin's broader, well-documented clinical impact was eclipsed by the promise of boutique precursors whose long-term relevance remains speculative. The paradox is striking. Niacin is still the only NAD precursor with large-scale human trials showing improved clinical endpoints, heart attacks prevented, mortality reduced, inflammation modulated. It's still one of the most powerful agents for lipid control, and it engages both NAD biosynthesis and GPR109A-mediated anti-inflammatory pathways. Its biochemical relevance has never been stronger. In the age of aging research, mitochondrial health, and immunometabolism, niacin touches all the right nodes. And yet it is marketed primarily as an uncomfortable vitamin, not a therapeutic tool. There is also a reputational divide between consumer perception and scientific literature. In labs, niacin continues to serve as a robust model for NAD research, used in rodent and cell studies to trigger measurable metabolic shifts. In immune research, it modulates T-cell behavior and suppresses inflammatory cytokines. In aging research, it restores NAD in tissues where salvage pathways falter. These findings point to a deeply adaptive molecule capable of responding to stress, inflammation, and energy deficits. But the public hears little of this. Niacin's image is not shaped by what it can do biochemically, but by what it failed to do commercially. To restore niacin's rightful place in modern medicine and wellness, a reframing is necessary. The flush should be acknowledged, not feared, especially since it can be mitigated with timing strategies, slow-release formulations, or dose ramping. Its systemic effects should be reclaimed, not hidden behind outdated trial summaries. Most of all, niacin's history should be viewed as a badge of resilience, not irrelevance. It didn't fade because it failed. It faded because it wasn't branded. In an era obsessed with longevity, metabolic health, and cellular optimization, niacin deserves a renaissance, not as a relic of nutritional science, but as a foundational tool in the therapeutic modulation of NAD biology. The science never stopped supporting it. Only the narrative did.